Hello everyone, welcome. My name is Melissa Showers. I am an artist based out of Houston, Texas. And if you're rejoining from yesterday, this is day 2. We are working on an really interesting AI generated image as a reference photo for this piece, and I'm really excited to continue on with the journey. So thanks for joining. Feel free to say hi in the chat. Love to hear what you're up to today. And if you have any questions or feelings about AI in general, love to open the topic up for discussion there as well. So for right now, I'm going to kind of introduce the drawing to you all who are just now joining. We have this reference photo that I created in a free app. It's not Firefly. I cannot wait for Firefly, just don't have access yet. So this one was a prompt that I used and just wanted to see what would be spit out basically of evil snake queen robot Gucci inspired fashion inside of a spaceship. I love coming up with some pretty wild prompts and seeing what happens. Just whatever I'm trying to concept in my mind, just kind of let my imagination go. It's really fun to see what comes out of that process and how many different ways you can improve to get the result you're looking for. So that's kind of where I landed here, and I'm going to continue working through the rest of this piece today. So I have her head is grouped in a set of layers, and then the reference sketch lives below. So I'm going to add a new layer that I've already done here to continue on with mainly kind of start with this really cool kind of necklace top to this crazy outfit with the snake skin. The snake scales are going to be extremely difficult, but I really want to make those come alive. But I'm going to start with that necklace. So I'm going to actually use vector for this, and I'm going to just go to the taper brush, which is one of my favorites. And I'm going to make sure the smoothing is all the way up so that it helps me with my lines, and just kind of utilize my foundational sketch that's underneath to kind of start blocking out some color. And you know, I will definitely be making this kind of my own, so I may not follow exactly what the image is looking like, because I like to get a little more creative and use that mainly for reference. So what I'll probably do is just draw half of this and mirror it, just to work a little smarter, not harder. So just making sure all the gaps are closed before I fill this. And I'm going to use that lighter green for now. So if I look back at the reference photo, it definitely looks more like a snake curled around her neck. So I don't want to kind of lose that. So I'm going to refine here a bit. And just kind of round out those edges. And just fill in this last bit here. It's all going to be smudged anyway, so it definitely doesn't have to be perfect. Alright, so if I go back to my reference image, it's definitely got this very bejeweled texture, which I would love to capture. So I think probably an ideal way to do that would be to work on the background first and then add an additional layer with all the texture. So I'm going to see what color this value looks like with the lightest part of this. So I'm going to go in and create some lines that will be shading to give it depth, make it look a little more 3D. And then I'll end up just smudging this together and see what this looks like. I definitely want it to look like a snake because that's the idea behind this. My son has a snake. It's in the office with me. You can't see it, but he is beautiful. He's actually a corn snake and he's peach, but I definitely wanted to go with some severe green palette here for this one. But he was an inspiration, I would say. His name is Peepers. Welcome if you're just joining. My name is Melissa. I'm streaming from Fresco today, working off of an AI generated image that I came up with for inspiration. So this shade, particular shade of green, definitely is different from her body and the snake's skin. It's got a more neon tone, which I do like. So I'm gonna bring a little more of that in to the snake. I'm gonna decide which tone I like. Kind of really want it to be this really brightest green in here. So now I'm gonna go back here. I'm gonna use my soft round opacity brush and kind of make that highlight happen. Now I'm going to blend that in and make sure that it looks complementary. I really want this to kind of pop off the page, the necklace. Smudge tool is extremely forgiving. You can really kind of push the pixels around. It's very fun to use, helps kind of establish silhouettes, and it's helpful when you have your foundational sketch underneath because you can still kind of see it with the kind of low transparency of this layer. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and duplicate that layer. I'm going to use my transform tool and flip it horizontal and then merge it here. Just an easy, quick way to work smarter, not harder when you're kind of building things out. If it works out to be something you want to be really symmetrical, which a lot of these AI generated images that I've found to experiment with are, they tend to have, the symmetry is like wild. So it's very fun to work that way sometimes, but also, you know, breaking things up is good too. But for this one, I think I'm gonna kind of change its shape just a little bit and maybe have it envelop her neck a little bit more so it's a little more believable. Push some pixels around a little bit more so those now are merged together. Definitely want it to look like a snake kind of slithering around her neck. Which is terrifying, but it's not real. I mean, hey, some people, you know, are able to handle that. I'm scared of my snake. He's too big now, and he's such a sweetie, but he's grown. Okay, I definitely like that. It's looking pretty cool. I'm not sure how I'm gonna incorporate that bottom piece. So this bottom piece here, definitely like that. So I think I will draw another layer. It's gonna be vector, using that same color. It looks like we can make this one look much bigger. Like the actual snake. Okay, I'm gonna draw that over. It's a little too close to the other. So now I'm just gonna bring it down. Kind of want the fabric to come up, so I'm gonna just draw it kind of in a weird way right now, because the fabric will be covering some of that. Alright, so let's start there. I think I'm gonna add some shading. I'll get rid of that. Add some shading. Pull it from that layer. I think I'll keep doing this in vector. Smudge it all together. Thanks for joining. If you're just joining, again, Melissa Showers here in Adobe Fresco, working on a piece in reference to an AI generated image. Very creepy snake evil bot queen with a Gucci style. Those are all the prompts. Definitely can have fun with that. All right, so let's convert that to a pixel layer and smudge it. It's definitely taking shape, looking like a snake. Just using the smudge tool to get the right silhouette. So if you haven't used Adobe Fresco and you've never used the smudge tool either, it's a really great way to transform your silhouettes without erasing and starting over, because it's very forgiving. You can control the strength of it too, which is really nice. So if you don't want to smudge too much too quick, you can build on that and lower the strength. Right now this is pretty high strength. All right. She is looking stoic. All right, so I think got some good foundation for the necklace. There's some really cool like jewels buried in there in this image. And of course, we need to transform it into a necklace. So I'm gonna grab another layer. I'm gonna put it underneath, I think, and just kind of come up with my own thing here. So I'm actually going to use the shapes from Adobe and see if I can find a cool geometric shape to start with. Not that one. So there's a great library built in Adobe Fresco that you can kind of bring in shapes. You can also add your own shapes, which is very cool. So I usually go to the comic library because there's more geometric shapes in there. So I think if I want it to look kind of like a jewel, I'm gonna start with this one, and I'm going to make it like a purplish neon color. I'm gonna make the fill vector, and I'm actually gonna bring that layer on top of the snake necklace. I'm going to make sure that I put this in the right spot, and just experimenting here, not really sure, you know, what it's gonna be, but just something to get started. So now I'm going to take that layer and duplicate it, and then I'm going to flip it horizontal and going to make it smaller. So I want this jewel to look very antique. I want it to look really detailed. So I'm going to make sure that it's a kind of a stark contrast to the smoothness of the snake and just a very geometric shape. And it's really nice to kind of get a head start with fresco shapes that are already built into the library so that you can kind of get a good concept going. So I need to merge these together, obviously, and I'm going to fill that in. So I think I'm going to make that smaller. And now what I'm going to do is duplicate that again. On the bottom layer, I'm going to make it bigger. And I'm going to position it in a way that it will give it some depth. And then I'm going to drop that color down and change the fill. So now if we go back out, there's a little bit of like a 3D-ish style going here. So what I'm going to do now is excuse me, bring this down a little bit more, and I'm going to kind of build off of this center shape with a larger shape around it to kind of encase it. So if I think about what colors I want this to be, I think I'm going to stick with this like very pale green, and I'm going to create a layer underneath, and I'm going to create this kind of diamond shape, large diamond shape. I'll fill it in. Oop. Always got to close the gaps. Should have taken care of that. Fill it in. Now I can adjust. So I think what I'll do here is lose the top of it. I can also play around with the perspective, which is really cool. So if I go to my transform tool and choose perspective, which is what I'm going for, is changing the perspective a little bit, it will do that as well. But this isn't going to necessarily work for this, so we'll try skew, see if that helps. Alright, now I'm going to just kind of delete the top of it. And now I'm going to duplicate that layer. And do the same thing here. I'm going to make it darker so it looks like it has depth. I'm just going to bring that down. My paint bucket and bring it below. So now if I zoom out, you know, these jewels, they're very pixelated. The app that I used was free. It's not Firefly, so you can't really see that. But I'm taking inspiration from this image, so I want to kind of make this my own. So I'm going to bring in some kind of different shapes here and kind of blend them together and see if that gives me the result that I'm looking for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to group all these layers together into a folder. It's going to be my backup. If I don't like my new result, I'm going to duplicate that layer group, and now I am going to merge these together, convert it to a pixel layer, and I'm going to smudge this a little bit and see what happens. So trying to kind of bring this together in a more of a 3D shape with the smudge tool. we'll see what we think. Make my smudge brush a little bit smaller. And then I'm going to add some highlights. I also can play with the layer properties to see if anything cool happens there. Because I do want to give this like LED shiny jewel effect, and I might need the help of some layer property changes for that. So right now I'm going to take this layer. Oop. This one I'm gonna hide first. Take this one, and I kind of want it to be, you know, look like it's wrapped up in the snake. So I am gonna move it underneath and see what that looks like. Maybe we'll rotate it around and see what kind of fits best. Because I likely will duplicate this and make like a few of these to fill the space and somehow make them different from each other. Okay, so I'm gonna do that, and now I'm gonna play with the layer properties first and see what happens. So if I go, right now it's set to normal. Let me zoom in a bit so everyone can see. If I change that, it's gonna give me a lot of different variations. And what I'm seeing if I can get something cooler than what I have. It's always gonna change the color based on the color that it is that you created, but also the background layer. So if you have just like a white background, it's not going to give you like as fun of an effect or as crazy as an effect, because the color of the background is going to change the outcome of any of these layer properties. So exclusion's kind of cool. Divide definitely is that kind of blacklight LED effect. And luminosity is actually cool too. Let's see, so I think what I'm gonna do is maybe I'll stick with linear light for now. Yeah, I think so. And I'm gonna go back on top of this layer and start adding some kind of jewel highlights and see how that does. So I'm gonna take the color that pink, and I'm gonna just not bring it in its brightest highlight yet. I just wanna kind of start small and then build up. The harder I press, the brighter it's gonna be. So if I press my stylus, well, let me make sure that's on normal. Okay, so not necessarily for this, but as we get lighter, you'll see what I'm talking about. So I'm gonna make sure to kind of extend the highlight to give it more depth, to give that kind of 3D jewel effect. And I'm gonna smudge this a little bit more down here, because I think that I like this filter, this kind of layer property. So I want to change the shape of things a little bit, see what happens with these colors blending together. You can definitely tell that there's a layer property, that there's a layer property applied, because it does really something funky with the pixels, and you can't truly push them around like you could if the filter was on normal. So just something to be aware of. So it's definitely got this kind of like neon glow look, which is cool. kind of has this like starfish vibe. So now I'm gonna just kind of pull on those highlights that I just added, but I'm definitely gonna add like a brighter one too. So get to that next layer, smooth all that out. Okay, so it's definitely popping off the page a little bit more the more I kind of layer up those highlights. So I'm gonna go a step further. I'm gonna change this color to a little bit brighter, almost white. I'm gonna go to my soft round opacity, pull that strength flow all the way up, and I'm going to show you how the harder you push, the more strength it gives and the brighter it will be. I'm gonna also take it to all the way to the white and get really close in there to really make it pop. I'm gonna be down to one pixel is the size of this pencil almost. Well, it's 4 right now, but getting pretty zoomed into the detail here. Okay, so if we just look at it without even smudging it, it looks pretty cool. I think that I am going to merge that layer down. So now we have this little jewel set. And I'm just gonna smudge in the highlights just a little bit. As you can see, when I merged the layer down, it also took on that layer's property. So it's not the same as it was, which is fine actually, because I do like the way it looks. It's definitely got that glow effect. So now I'm just going to duplicate this layer, and I'm going to flip it horizontal and bring it to the other side. So we've got this symmetry going here. All right, I'm gonna move over the other one just a little bit. And now I've kind of got this jeweled snake necklace thing going. I also like this shape for the diamond on her forehead, so I think I'm going to see what I can utilize there by duplicating that. And I want to make sure that that layer doesn't get lost in the mix, so I'm going to bring it up above here. I'm going to put the necklace layers in a subfolder just to try and stay organized, because my layers will get out of control and there'll be 100 layers and it'll be crazy. Okay, so now I've got this one. Now I'm going to have to change the layer property here if I don't want it to look the same, which I don't. So I'm gonna go in here and see what I like. Let's see what this looks like. That's kind of cool. So I'm going to duplicate this, mirror it, and let's see what that looks like. Ooh, I like that. Because to me, that it's pretty bright, so I may play with that, but it's bringing up that green to her forehead. Because right now it feels a little disconnected, and I need to kind of bring it up a little bit. So maybe I won't keep it that bright, which there's 2 ways that I could do that. I could lower the opacity, which might give me what I want it to look like. So let's see what that looks like. Yeah, so that's a little better. or I can just change the layer properties again. So I'm gonna bring this all the way back up, and let's just see maybe a different, if one is different, a little more muted. So that's gonna be super bright. That's like a whole nother look, which does tie in the color of her lips, and if I do add any more peach, then maybe. So that's a possibility. Exclusion. Pin light's pretty cool because it does look similar to the necklace, but not exactly the same. Gonna get the same effect with those. Soft light is nice because it's a little more muted, so that's definitely a strong contender. That's cool. Overlay, linear dodge. If you have any idea of what you like and you see which one you think looks best, you can put in the chat, because I find myself going through layer properties forever trying to decide. So if you have any thoughts that you want to share, say hi in the chat. Thanks for joining. My name is Melissa again, illustrator out of Houston, streaming from Adobe Fresco on the iPad. Darken's pretty cool actually, because it kind of separates it, so I kind of like that actually. Let's see. So what I might do here then is duplicate that and then change the filter underneath and see if, yeah, see, let's see if we can get what I'm thinking in my head to happen on this. I think overlay might. Yeah, that kind of looks cool. All right, so what I'm gonna do is lower the opacity of that brighter one. And I think I'm gonna just leave it there for now. So now I'm gonna go back to this snake situation. I'm gonna group these layers together, and I'm gonna put them in my face grouped layers. And I'll bring in the original diamond that I drew and just stick it underneath because they're all their own layer. And I can test out an animation to show you guys really quickly. So Fresco has some really cool animation tools. It's got an animation timeline. You can animate in Fresco. You can animate the character you draw in Fresco or whatever you draw in Fresco. It's really awesome. So I'm just gonna draw a path because there's path animation, and just automatically will follow that path. So let's say I wanted to give this like spinny effect on this jewel. There's a couple ways you could do that. So let's draw a really small circle, and that's gonna have it aligned to the path. You can also grow and shrink any of the objects you have on a path. So let's say we shrink it all the way down, and then we add some multiples, and we can see, you know, how many times we want it to shrink. So it'll start to give you some really interesting combinations for interactions when you're playing with the layer properties of the timeline and animation timeline. I highly recommend having some fun in Fresco and experimenting, and there's tutorials and all that. It's so much fun. So for now, let's just say we're gonna leave it like this. We may add a sway, and so it's on a grow shrink, and let's just change this layer property really quick. Let's do that one. So now I'm gonna pause it and zoom back out. I'm gonna hit play, and it's got this kind of weird, you know, creepy animated jewel. And you know, when I look at this, I can still see that sketch underneath of where I started with that. So I'm gonna actually erase that. I'm going to hide that. I'm gonna go back to my original sketch, and I'm gonna zoom in here and just smudge that. So we don't need that. I'm gonna have to go down to the other layer too and do the same. So now when I go back out and I unhide the layer, now you won't see that. It's a little bit of a shadow now, so I'll have to fix that. Definitely have to add some color here. I'll hide that so I can see what I'm doing. And on her face layer with all the color, I'll just bring in my green to fix that. All right, so now I can bring that layer back out. And when I press play, it's pretty cool. So I'll probably do the same thing to these little jewels, and I also want to make her blink. So I think first what I'll do is just easily make these spin. Actually, we can try a few things because I would definitely want to show you some really cool things. So let's say I draw the path off the canvas into this area. It's gonna follow the path and kind of swerve on that line. I can add multiples here and make them grow and shrink to make them look like they're kind of disappearing. I can make the percentage a little bit bigger, and then I can also have them do it multiple times. So almost looks like, you know, little baby UFOs going. I mean, who knows what's happening in this? This is the AI world here with this reference image. So who knows what's actually happening? My imagination likes to go there. So we'll just pretend it's like little jewel UFOs. So there's a lot of cool ways that you can animate objects on paths that you create. Even if I just draw another one right here, it's gonna just do the same animations and interactions and just in different spots. So this is great when you want to animate a butterfly or something in the sky, if you want to animate airplanes, a sunset, like clouds. I do this a lot with clouds, path animations, or just want to add some interest to anything that you're working on and just have some fun. So when I press pause, I'm still going to see all these paths with little X marks. If I want to delete them, I can, which is what I'm going to do for these. And I'm going to go back to this other layer since it is also separate, and I'm going to draw a path here as well. That's going to be similar to the other one. So let me just see what happened here. So we've got that one and this one. All right, hang on. Where's this path? Okay, there's no path. Here's the path. Interesting. I don't know why it's cutting across like that. Hang on a second. Oh, okay. Because I drew it wrong in the first place. Okay, that makes sense. All right, so now I'm going to kind of start over here. Let's find the path here. Okay, which layer is this? I think I know what's happening. I'm going to delete this layer. I must have had another piece of something on that layer, like another piece of a drawing. I was trying to bring that in. So I'm going to duplicate this and just bring it over to the other side. There. And now I'll just start over with the animations. Alright, so first I'll animate this one. Bring it off the canvas. I'll have it go in the other direction. And I'm going to add multiples. And let's see what aligned to path looks like. So now it kind of really looks like they're like flying, which is pretty cool. If I hit sway, then it's like a little bit turned. So I kind of like that. I think I'm going to leave that, and I'm going to duplicate it on the other layer, this layer, and do the same thing. So I'll add multiples. I'll have to check and see what multiples I added to the other path, and then I'll do sway as well and align to path, and now it's kind of got that same kind of glider effect. So when I hit pause and then I hit play again, we've got all of our animations going. It's going to always show the path unless you take, unless you take select the other layer that you weren't just animating, and then the path will go away. But it's looking pretty cool. I want to make her blink next, so I'm going to show you guys how I can do that. So I'm going to go back out here, and if you're just joining, thank you for watching. If you've been here the whole time, I appreciate it. This is day 2 of this kind of creepy snake queen with a Gucci inspired fashion from an AI generated image, and I'm working in Fresco, streaming from my iPad, and thanks for joining. So now I'm going to go to her eyes. The animating eyes is one of my favorite things to do. So what I need to do is, since I have her eyes on a separate layer anyways, I'm just going to put a layer right on top of her face layer, and I'm basically just gonna draw over the eye. And if you've watched me before, I usually do this with all my characters. Draw over the eye and make it look like it's closed, and then I'll do the same. I'll duplicate that, mirror it to the other side, and then I'll make her blink. It's super easy to do and fun, just to make your drawings come to life. So I really love kind of making my portraits blink, my characters blink. So I'm just gonna close the eye basically, and I'm gonna keep the bottom part because I'm gonna utilize that as if it was her bottom lashes. And you're gonna have to make sure that, you know, you can't see through it, right? So soft round opacity tool tends to be a little transparent, so you may have to go back. Like, I can use my vector brush now and just kind of draw a shape just to make it really look closed. Oh, well, that makes sense. I need to bring this all the way up. There we go. Okay, so now I'll just merge that down to a pixel layer, and then I can smudge it into place. So now when I zoom out, it's starting to look like her eye is closed. We still have some work to do. So I'm gonna bring in some darker shadows from the black, and I'm gonna use my soft round opacity to kind of put some more black here in the crease to make it look like her eye is closed. I'm gonna make that crease a little bit darker here, and then I'm gonna bring in her lash line on top. And then I'll have to, of course, put a little highlight in the center. I'm not going to go straight to that lightest value. I'm going to kind of build on it, so we can get an actual shape going here. And then I'll bring it up a little bit brighter. So as you can see, this doesn't look, you know, great, but what's great is the smudge tool. I feel like I am the president of the smudge tool company if there was one, and I vote for your product because I talk about the smudge tool all the time. I use it all the time in everything, but it is so great in Fresco, and it is just an easy way to change the shape of what you're working on and start in a very rough way. So that's why I love it, because and it's also really fun to use. Can't say it enough. Definitely should try it. Okay, so I can still see her lashes a little bit above, so I need to draw over that a little bit more, and then I can bring that blue down a little bit. So now it's starting to look more like her eye is closed. And I'm gonna probably, you know, bring in a little bit more of a lash line, and I'll also bring up or bring down some more shadows here. Let me bring the blue back. Okay, and now let's see. So I'm gonna smudge this into more of the shape I need it to be. Getting closer. Okay, now it's time for the lashes to be drawn in here. So the lashes aren't super defined when her eyes are open. They're really kind of just big and creepy, which is what I wanted. So that's what I'm gonna do here. So now I'm gonna take the eye and I'm gonna duplicate the layer. And I'm going to hit my transform and flip it horizontal and bring it to the other side. So now that was so much easier than drawing it twice. I am going to position it where it needs to go. And now I can merge those layers down. And now I'm just gonna kind of refine a little bit more. And then I'll show you how to make them blink in the animation timeline, which is so fun and cool and so easy. All right. Still deciding if I should put a little bit more of a highlight. I think I should, so I'm going to bring in some of that kind of bluish green. And see what that does. All right, I think I like that. And now I'm gonna do test out like a super harsh highlight and see what that looks like. I gotta make it much smaller. And I kind of want to make it look like glossy. Let's see. So now I'm going to smudge that. And I'm going to bring the strength down because I want to see if I might want to keep some of the shape, some of the integrity of the shape a little bit more than if I just blast it with the strength. So it's got this like kind of glowy effect. Hello Akash in the chat, thank you so much for complimenting and saying beautiful. I appreciate it. It's definitely been fun working on this piece, and thank you for joining. I would love to hear what everyone thinks, if anyone has any questions in the chat, so feel free to drop your name or drop where you're from, what you're up to, any questions you might have. Okay, so I do like this, but I feel like I need to kind of blend it a little bit more. I'm going to drop the strength down again and see if I make it a little bit wider. Yeah, I think I need to make it a little bit wider, but not maybe in that whole area. Just here. Yeah, that's good. So for now, I like this. I'm gonna merge that down. So now we've got a separate layer for her eyes to close. So now if I'm gonna animate this, it's super simple. So right now, if you look at the bottom, there's a animation frame and it's on 1 right now, but I'm gonna add an empty frame. And then I'm gonna take that first frame and I'm gonna duplicate a bunch of empty ones. So if we're working at 12 frames per second, which is what I'm working at in this animation timeline in this piece, then I'm gonna likely have 2 frames where her eyes are closed and then make it equal the full amount of time. So I need those 2 last frames to end on 12, which they do. So now I am going to press play and her eyes are blinking and it looks pretty creepy and cool. So now I really like the style that I created of her eyes when they're closed. I want to work on now what they look like open because I feel like they need some help. So I'm going to just kind of add some more highlights here. And it's gonna have to be really, really small. So I'm gonna need to brighten things up here. And I know that this layer, actually I'm gonna have to add another layer because the property is different there. So I'm gonna have to add another layer here. Okay, that's definitely better. And I want it to look like she's got snake eyes, but I have to figure out how that's gonna look with this highlight. Okay. I definitely want to lighten up this area a little bit more. Okay, now I feel like we can see her eye a little bit better. And I'm going to change the color there. Let's see. I'm going to bring that bright blue back in. And go back over with the black. And I'm just going to smudge these together over here to make it look a little more interesting. And let's see what that looks like. Yeah, that's better. So now I'm going to give a little more highlight and detail in the eyelashes. I'm going to fix the highlight on her brow as well. So I want to see what happens. Okay, good. That didn't make a drastic change. Let's see if it did. Oh, it did. Okay, so I'm gonna have to leave those layers separate because I can't blend the layer properties together. It's gonna choose one for me. So if I look at where her eyebrows are located, they're on this layer. So I really need to fix this and blend it a little bit more. A little too poofy here, so I want to take it down a little bit. Okay, that's looking better. So now I'm going to just kind of blend out her eyebrows. And I'm going to bring the brush size down. Okay, that's looking better. So now I'm going to work on her lashes a little bit more and give them a little bit more definition. So the only way that that's going to be possible is if I highlight them. So I'm going to take a little bit of a lighter color and kind of make them pop a little bit more. I'm going to have to do that on this layer. I feel like they're blending a little bit. I'm not sure if I like that or if I want to make it a little more prominent. And I also want to get some more highlight going. So I'll make my brush a little bit bigger. And I'm going to add a few highlights over here. And then I'm going to add some more definition of highlight. I'm going to have to make it really, really small here. So now when I blend that together, it's going to hopefully look more subtle. Yeah. So I probably need to blend it a little bit more. I think I'm going to lose the bottom part a little bit more. Have it just fade up a little bit. That's cool. And then I'm going to lose some of the top too. So I kind of like this bottom part a little like, it almost looks like scaly. So since she's like a snake queen, I'm gonna go with that. I'm gonna bring it down again at the top so it's a little more subtle and graduated. So now I'm gonna duplicate this layer, and sometimes I duplicate it and keep it where it's at if I need it to pop a little bit more, but I think I am going to just bring it to the other side. So I'm gonna mirror that, bring it to the other side so I don't have to draw it again. And figure out where it goes. Cool. So now I'm going to adjust a little bit because it's not going to exactly fit the way I need it to. I'm also going to add some more color. There's some skin color I need to add here. And then I'm going to smudge all that in. And I'm thinking I need to, yeah, do that. So then I'm gonna just smudge that out just a little bit more. So I'm still on my face layer here. Probably gonna need to go back and work on the eyebrows a little bit more. So now if I merge this down and merge it down into the face, that is going to be a lot easier to keep track of layers, and I can just kind of blend everything together. Very cool. So I kind of lost the highlight somewhere. There's so many layers at this point. I'll have to go back and kind of re-add to that as I go. But for the most part, the eyes are looking better than they did. So let's try this again. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. It might be a little too fast, so I'm going to duplicate that frame, and I'm going to add a couple of frames after that, and then I'm going to delete some frames. So let's see, if I put 4 frames in front and back, That gives me 12. There's one extra there. There we go. Let's see if that is better. Yes, that is better. All right, cool. So I think next I'm going to continue on with maybe some of the background stuff would be fun. I also kind of want to work on the rest of her outfit. So I think I'll probably just finish there. Let's see. So I'm going to duplicate this layer and create her necklace without having to recreate everything. So I'm going to drop that there, and underneath this I'm going to add a shape. So it's like a kind of like a little medallion. I'm going to fill that in and smudge it. Kind of want it to look like it's a part of the snake, although that would be painful for the snake, but it's not real. So I'm gonna play around with the layer properties potentially, but for now I'm just gonna leave it. So I'm gonna bring in that bright green, I think. I'm gonna actually look back at my reference image and see something. So this has like some gold tones. Okay, so I don't think I want to do gold. I think I want to make it more look like the snake. So I'm going to bring this to be part of it. Make my brush a little bit smaller. And then I'm going to add a little bit of a shadow. Make it a little bit darker and make my brush a lot smaller. And I'm gonna go back and smudge. Smudging my life away. Now it looks like it's part of the snake. I'm going to kind of blend it a little bit more. Alright, so if I hit play, it's copied over the animation too. When I duplicated that layer, it's going to bring that path animation over. It also asks you when you're going to move a layer if you want to transform not only the size of the layer, whatever you're wanting to do, but the path as well. So I did. And that's fine. I'm going to leave it like that for now. I think I'm going to lay some foundation down for the snake skin, whatever she's got on. This really cool kind of like shawl thing. That's probably going to take me the most time. So I'm just going to lay the foundation down, but I want to group some of these layers together, starting to get a little bit messy. Okay, so now I've got those jewels in one group, which I also kind of want to be in the same group as the necklace. So I'm going to take that group out and I'm going to drop it into this necklace group here. Now everything should be together. There we go. Oh, I did lose her her head piece. So I'm gonna have to bring that back, which is in here somewhere. There it is. So now I'm gonna need to take that out and out of here and into this group and drop it here. Now we're back on track. Oh, we're not back on track. Her eyes. That's interesting. All right, so those need to come back out. There we go. All right, I'm not sure what happened here. I've gotten lost in my sea of layers. Let me just see where I am. Back in here. Back in here. No. Going back out. Oh, I know where it is. It's in the necklace layer. It's gotta be. Anyone can help me in the chat. Where do my layers go? Let's see. Here it is. So here's the problem. When you have the eyes blink and it's on a later frame, you're not going to see a thumbnail in the layer itself. And so you have to really keep track of things or else you won't know where it is, which is what happened just now. So I'm going to take her eyes blinking out because they need to be on top. And I'm going to bring these eyes back in here. There we go. Now we're back on track. Yes. Okay. She's blinking. Everything looks the way it's supposed to. Oh, it can be stressful with all these layers. Okay, so now making the snake skin is going to be kind of the last part of this live stream. So if I look at my reference photo, we have a lot going on here. If I take the darkest color and start there and build upon that, that might be a good way to go. So I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to start with this like really kind of foresty green. And I'm going to fill it. And make sure that I kind of keep in mind the folds of everything, even though the pattern of the scales will be over it. There's also some highlights I'll have to add at the end. But for now, we're gonna just fill in these dark spots for the shadows. And then I'm gonna bring this color up a little bit more and fill the rest. So now if I go back here, there may be a shape in Fresco that is similar to these scales. So let's see if we can find it. All right, so there's been a lot of new brushes added to the Fresco library. I highly suggest that you check it out if you have not. Test all the brushes, see what you like, see what you can use for things. So I don't know if there's like a brush that looks like scales, so I'm gonna see if I can find one. There's so many to look through. I have my favorites here, but I know I don't really have much that looks like that. I could try though. I mean, I could just draw them myself, but I would like some help. So let's see. What could we use? Maybe halftones. There we go. There's some cool stuff. So it looks like Kyle's helping me out here. Kyle Webster with all these great brushes. So we have this like kind of clam down. So let's use a lighter color so we can pick a good one. Clam down. Wow, look at that. That could be very helpful, looking like scales. Let's see what else there is. So I'm gonna favorite that just by starring it. And then that's clam down. So if we do clam left, it's gonna go in a different direction, which I also like that. So I'm gonna keep that brushed as well. And clam up. So I can see myself using, as the scales change direction, I can see myself using these brushes for that, which could be helpful. So I'm just gonna go ahead and favorite all of those. And just take a quick look to see if there's anything else that could be helpful. Hatch reverse, hatch, this could be helpful for textures. So I definitely like that brush too. So I'm gonna favorite that brush. And let's see if there's any others. If anyone knows of a good brush that looks like snake scales, drop it in the chat and save me some time. But also it's cool to see what these brushes look like. Now that looks like a snake. That's pretty cool. So I'm just gonna go ahead and start there. It's hard for me to not want to look through all of these, but it'll take a while. So first thing I need to do is add a new layer and just kind of play around with this like starting point. Gonna need to figure out how big this brush needs to be. So that's a nice pattern that may work. So I'm gonna see if what this looks like underneath when I smudge it. And see what happens here. And now I'm gonna just play around with the layer properties of the print, the layer that I just did, this one, the pattern. Couldn't find my words. So let's see. So darken. Let's see if overlay. So I like that. That's kind of what I was hoping for. So now I'm gonna go back here and just like smudge it a little bit more. Okay. So now I think I'm gonna duplicate this layer. And let me see. Actually, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to delete that. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to add another layer. I'm going to try the clamshell brush. So if you ever save your favorites, you've got a favorites panel here. That's where everything will live once you save it. So there's a few things I could try. Let's try this halftone, and then we'll do the clamshell. So this gives it a little more texture too, which is cool. And I'm gonna try the clamshell too. I'm gonna just kind of focus on highlights with this brush. So just using the reference drawing and figuring out where they live roughly. So now if I go to my layers panel, because I don't want it to be that bright and I want it to kind of blend in a little bit more. overlay is going to be my best bet. And I'm going to drop the opacity down a little bit. So I've got those two texture pattern layers. I'm going to add one more. And I'm going to use the clamshell. And I'm going to use clamshell to the left because that's the direction that they're going in the reference piece. I'm going to try it with a darker color. And I'm going to just, I wish it was bigger than this. Okay, it's not bigger. So I'm going to make it really faint. Let's see if I can. All right, that's pretty cool. Pretty interesting. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is add a little bit of a highlight. I'm going to change my brush to the soft round opacity brush. And I'm going to add a little bit of shine where the highlights are. And now I'm gonna just smudge it together. I'm gonna go to this layer, smudge that a little bit. So what I want to do here is play around with the layer properties, see what happens. There's some cool things that happen with a hard mix of the layer properties. Just saying, really wild stuff that if you want it to look like kind of edgy, then that's cool. That's interesting that divide will kind of give that effect, so that's also cool. So I think I kind of actually like the darker, which is like opposite of what I just did. But again, that's why I like to mess around with these things. So I'm gonna see what happens if I merge all of these together and go back and change that layer property. You can see that really makes a huge difference. Just merging them together like that. So that's also interesting. Ooh, and that's nice and subtle. Too many choices. That's kind of the darker that I was going for, so I'm gonna stick with that. Okay, so now I'm gonna duplicate that layer. I'm gonna flip it. I have a rogue drawing at the top, rogue piece of rogue pixels. Okay, so I like that. So I'm gonna merge those together. I'm gonna delete those rogue little guys at the top and save it. And I think that's gonna be it for me today. Thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate it. And if you enjoyed this stream and you want to learn more about Fresco and how to utilize AI for good and in a respectful way, through generating images, not calling it art and not claiming it to be your own, but using it to inspire, enhance, and just have fun in relation to your own art. So follow me. It will be a journey. I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend, and I will see you next time.